Good morning across Australia. I'm Dante. I'll be taking you through this pretty fast-paced session of developing your brand's messaging in an hour using the StoryBrand concepts from Donald Miller's book, Creating a Story Brand. I've just sent through a link in the chat window for you to be able to go and connect with the StoryBrand website, which will allow you to follow along and take your notes. And at the end of the session, what I'll be doing is getting you to send or share those notes with me so I can help you put together what your brand's message happens to be. So it's a little bit of an extra thing we'll be able to do to help you to identify what your brand message will be and then how you'll use that in various places, from social media through to your elevator pitch, all sorts of stuff, so you can get a coherent, cohesive, and really easy to remember brand message to be able to use. Let's get underway and I'll share the screen and we'll get started. Now, please be warned, this will move rather quickly, so I will try and answer questions as we go along, but please do ask them in the Q&A or in the chat window. I'll be able to follow those up there. I've got multiple screens going so I can see everything coming up as it comes through. Going to start off with a quick quote from Benjamin Disraeli, former UK Prime Minister, who was, I guess, the guy who was the father of the Conservative Party, which he had very progressive ideas for someone who was apparently a conservative. He said, "Talk to people about themselves and they will listen for hours." He used to have a nickname called Silent Ben, and that was because he basically didn't do a lot of talking when he was working with his constituents. He would actually do a lot of listening. So he basically listened to them and then be able to talk back to them about the things that interested them. It made him very popular in his electorate, and then obviously very popular with his party when he was elected the Prime Minister. And on another little side there, he's the first Jewish Prime Minister of England or the UK. So it was one of those incredibly different things that came out about that, was that, you know, up against the Church of England, a Jewish Prime Minister was able to rise through the ranks of the Conservative Party and then change the way it looked at things by making it less about what the Conservatives wanted and more about what the people were actually asking for. This is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program. It's an Australian government initiative working with Business Station in Western Australia, Regional Development Australia, Brisbane in Queensland, and Treaty Business Consulting in the Northern Territory. You can find out more at asbas.com.au, and this recording will be made and shared on YouTube a little bit later today on the Business Station channel and my own Dante St. James channel as well. I've usually got it up within about an hour or two of it going live like this. So if there's anything you do miss, you'll be able to go back through that. Now, for those of you who just arrived in the channel, I've got a link in the chat window you might want to have a look at, which is the mystorybrand.com, which is where you get started with taking your notes as you're going along. So you've got a few minutes until we actually start the note-taking part of this, so you can take care of that. The reason for the notes, again, is so that you can send me those, and I can help you come up with what your StoryBrand brand script is that we will help to use more effectively across your social media channels, your Google channels, your website. In fact, it's got some really good applications specifically on websites as well. This is based upon Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand, which is all about clarifying your customer's message so that they will actually listen to what you have to say. He's got a series of books that I'm doing a series of webinars on based upon the Story Brand. The second one being Marketing Made Simple, which gives you a formula for building a website, which makes it a much more effective, to the point website that actually converts customers. And then there's Business Made Simple, his most recent one, which is about creating a simple business that just works because it's a repeatable, replicatable program. The link is in the I might have to put that link back in there again. If you arrived a little bit late, you probably missed the link, so I'll just put it in again. It is, no, that's not the link. That is definitely not the link. It is let me find it now, mystorybrand.com. There we go. It should be in the chat window again. So just follow that address and you'll be able to start setting up. Still got a few minutes until we get to that point, so please go and do that if you can. Part of what we'll cover today is a bit about what your customer actually wants, rather than what you're telling them what they want, what their problem is, because we know that people don't come to us unless they're missing something or they've got some kind of problem in their life that they want to have solved, and what it means for you to be their guide. We'll look at what success means for your customer, what failure they're trying to avoid, because we're a lot more driven by avoiding failure than what we are by looking for success. And we'll look at the transformation that you'll be able to deliver to them. This all sounds very esoteric and very, very up in the clouds. It's not. It's very, very obvious stuff. It's very, very down to earth, and it'll make a lot of sense, even if the way we're going to look at it kind of feels like it's a little bit, oh, what movies have to do with this? Background of mine, if you've not come across me before, I originally was a doctor, educated through the University of Western Sydney. I completed my studies in marketing and business information systems through the University of New South Wales, and have done a lot of certifications through the Chartered Institute of Marketing and TAFE New South Wales. Although, mind you, I haven't lived in New South Wales since what, 2000? So these are all quite a long time ago, but I studied remotely with the University of New South Wales, getting those qualifications in 2016. I work with Facebook as a trainer, as a digital marketing associate, a planning, buying, creative strategist, and community management professional. And I've worked with a bunch of different government and non-government programs to help deliver digital skills and business growth skills to people, because I've owned and run a number of businesses myself, and now have 3 of my own that I'm running now that I'm growing up. So what I do, I build businesses up and then I sell them. And sometimes when they stop performing, I buy them back, which I recently did with my business called Clickstarter. I sold it off as a very viable business. It became a little bit lackadaisical under the new owners, so I bought it back at a reduced price, and now I'm building that back up again so I can sell it again. Very different approach to businesses that most will have, but it's one of those things which is all about delivering as much value as I can through that business and then making it be able to run itself so it doesn't actually need me at all. This is my brand message. I've actually changed it just slightly since this screenshot was taken. It says, I'm Dante St. James. I transform hesitant business owners into confident, capable marketers. That's what my core brand message is. A bit of a slogan, but what it is saying, this is what I do, and this is who I do it for. And this is the problem that I solve. I've taken out the word confused because it felt like it was a little bit accusatory. It's like, oh, you're just confused, but rather hesitant means that they're capable, but they're just a little bit hesitant to sort of step over the line. And then I give just these 4 main areas that I actually operate in as a consultant. So that's the kind of message that we're going to come out of this with. So once you've got all your notes down, you send them through to me, then I'll be able to go away, help you put together that message so that you can then go, you know what, I'm going to use that, or I won't use that at all. And that's completely free, no obligation, as part of the ASBAS Digital Solutions program. So how do we get to that point where we actually understand what our brand message is? To do that, we're going to go to the movies. Now, I'm hoping we've got mostly women on this call today. So I'm going to say, hopefully you've seen this movie, Eat, Pray, Love, with Julia Roberts. Really beautiful movie. It's quite romantic, and it's got a very, very clear story from the path of someone who's hesitant and confused through to transformed at the end. So to give a bit of a background on the story, if you haven't seen it, Julia Roberts' character, her name is Liz. Liz has a bit of a problem. She's in a fairly loveless marriage. It's very, very predictable. She's got nothing going really on in her life, and she just doesn't want to be in that marriage anymore. She doesn't have kids. She's highly successful as an author, but just doesn't feel like she's got that she doesn't have any excitement in her life, no passion for her life. So as a result, she goes, I'm going to do something different. So she leaves her husband and decides that she's going to do something a bit bigger, live a bit more passion in her life. So she finds a fix. She needs to find a fix for that. She finds a fix in all the wrong places with a bit of a theater going wild child actor who plays a particular character in an adaptation of one of her books that she falls in love with, has this tumultuous, abusive relationship with, and they decide finally to part ways with each other. And she decides, I've got to go and travel the world. I'm going to eat, I'm going to pray, I'm going to love. I'm going to eat in Rome, I'm going to pray in India, and I'm going to love in Bali at the end of the year. So she's okay, this is what I'm going to do. I've got the money to do it. I'm just going to do it. Take a year to find myself. So when she first drops into Rome, she finds a guide who is a Swedish tourist who's living in Rome at the time, who gives her a bit of a plan, a call to action, which is basically learn to live a little bit. Eat the pasta, eat the cake, drink the full fat coffee. Just, if your jeans get a little too tight, just buy a bigger pair of jeans. And she teaches her to, I guess, get something out of a life that she doesn't have right now. She goes off to India, meets another guide who gives her a plan and a call to action. She's wanting to know how I can actually meditate and get to that transcendental state. And her guide, who's just another one of the participants at the yoga and transcendental meditation ashram, is just saying, well, basically, you're carrying too many groceries with you in your life. You've got all this baggage. Every time you go in there, your brain's full. So you've got to actually empty out your brain so the universe can rush in and give you some answers. Her next guide is in Bali, a guy called Kutut. He's an elder in a village, and he gives her a plan of how to just enjoy love, just to let love in instead of having all these walls. Let love actually bite you on the bum, and if you get hurt, so what? If you don't get hurt, it could be great. So she finds some success in that, falls in love, and lives, I assume, happily ever after with the man of her dreams in Bali, who's also got kids in Australia, but she lives in New York. So I don't know how that works out. Probably another expat in Bali. That'd be groundbreaking, wouldn't it? From the beginning of the story to the end of the story, she's transformed from an unhappy shell of a woman into someone who feels fulfilled, knows who she is, and's got a plan for her future and how she's going to live. A similar story can be told in Star Wars if Eat, Pray, Love is not particularly not particularly familiar to you. Star Wars, you got the kid who's got a problem. Luke Skywalker is a kid who works on who works on his uncle and aunt's moisture farm on a desert planet. He knows that he's destined for something much greater in life. He doesn't know what it is, but someday the Galactic Empire, the evil Galactic Empire, comes to call and actually kills his aunt and uncle and destroys their farm, which leaves him without anything. He needs something. He knows that he has to do something different in life. So he comes across Ben Kenobi, which is little does he know that Ben Kenobi's been watching Luke all his life, because Luke is the son of a great Jedi warrior, a great someone who had a lot of powers, a bit of a wizard, and Ben Kenobi's one himself. So he's then this guy that introduces Luke to who he really is, who gives him a plan to go and save the princess from the Death Star, to go and change the politics of the galaxy, calls him into action and says, here's your mission if you choose to accept it. And as a process, Luke then leads to a success and avoids failure, which allows him to become, go from basically being the awkward kid on the farm to a galactic hero that is a name on the lips of everybody who is trying to get rid of that evil galactic empire. How it works in the movies is a character has a problem. They meet a guide who gives them a plan to overcome that problem, calls them into action, leads them through to success, and helps them to avoid failure in that quest so that they're transformed. For a customer, that looks like a customer has a problem. They meet you, who gives them a solution and reasons to use it. It leads them to solving the problem and avoids the results of failing to solve that problem so that they are transformed. So it could be that a customer basically needs to, say you're a lifestyle coach or a well-being coach, something like that. Your customer or your client has a problem. They just got an unfulfilling life. They meet you. You've got the solutions to be able to show them how to have a better life. So you put that solution in front of them, and then you give them a bunch of reasons why they really should use this. You make it so compelling that it makes them want to take that on and leads them through to actually having some success, solving that big issue, that big pain point in their lives. And most importantly, helps them to avoid staying the same as they were, where they were critically unhappy. So they're ultimately transformed from someone who's very unhappy through to someone who has the answers and knows what they're doing with their life and has a plan and a purpose for what they're doing. So there's lots of steps in there. Let's break them down to each step. And this is where the notes will start to get. So if you've got that StoryBrand website and you've set that up and you've got yourself logged into it, this first step is going to be around the character. Now, the character is the customer, and the customer is the Luke Skywalker of this story, not you. You're actually a different character in this story. So the customer is the hero. Understanding that they are the hero means you need to make things appropriate to them. So it's a website, an ad, a post on Facebook, or a post on Instagram, or even if you're daring to go onto TikTok and put a video on there, that the whole point is that they are the center of every message you put out there. For example, a very real resort in Florida was a national award winner for service in 2019, and they had these beautiful architectural shots of their resort and just beautiful buildings, gorgeous grounds. But there was something very missing from all those photos. The first thing was that the key message on their website was, national award winner for service in 2019, with one of the initial photos they showed was of a reception desk that had nobody at it, nobody being served, and a great big open area with nobody in it. So the service winner is not actually serving anybody in their photos. Through this BrandScript and StoryBrand process, they then formed a message which was, find the luxury and rest you've been looking for. That was ultimately what they decided through this process of unpacking who their client was or who their guest was, of understanding this person just needs luxury and rest because they're having a really interesting, a really rough time. Sorry, my bell's ringing in the background, so I can't answer it right now. It's a delivery from Australia Post. So what they had to do is swap that around from being about them to about being what the customer or the guest actually gets. So instead of, here's something really awesome about us, it's about, here's something really awesome that's a benefit for you. This is also in other kinds of businesses. So you can look at maybe a lawn mowing business. Instead of saying 100% local with over 20 years of experience, which is great, that's all about you, you go for a lawn that'll make your neighbors jealous. That's all about the client. The South Side's favorite L'Oreal salon, that's all about you. But the perfect space to relax with your best friend, that's all about the customer or the guest in this case. So you're taking everything, you're flipping it around. All the things that are great about you get put on hold. Now you're going to say all the things that you do and how they apply to what the customer's experience is. What are you offering to the customer that will make them go, wow, this is something that I definitely want? Let's just say it's a fruit and vegetable delivery service. So instead of the words saying fruit and veg boxes with a wide range of fruit and vegetables, that's the thing. But what's the point? What's the benefit? The benefit is no crowded shopping centers, just perfect, fresh food delivered to you. And then it could be for someone who's a coach, unlocking your hidden potential for a life of freedom and success. Just a bunch of buzzwords, means nothing to anyone. But the benefits are better relationships, better businesses, a better life in every way. That's something that we all really want. That's about the client, not about your service. So what we want to do now is unpack in the first panel in your My Story brand is to go, what does your customer actually want? Now think about this. If you are, if I go back a slide, if you are that coaching service, the customer doesn't actively look for freedom and success. They're just looking for a better life, better businesses, better relationships, better way of getting through their life. Nobody's necessarily looking for a fruit and veg box, but they're looking to avoid crowded shopping centers and supermarkets and perfect fresh food delivered rather than, rubbish that's going to be picked up in a market that looks like it's been bruised and battered and not really that happy. So in this first one, you're going to write down, what is it that your customer truly wants? And if you're going to struggle with this one's probably the one where it's probably the hardest question that you're going to ask. What does my customer actually truly want? They're not wanting your product. So if you're, let's say, a makeup artist, they're not looking for a makeup artist. What they're looking for is the feeling of being beautiful. Another example would be, well, if you want to actually up in the chat window, just quickly write in what it is you do, and I'll be able to sort of throw back an idea of what it is you're looking for. So let's say, for instance, you are a property manager in real estate. So if you're a property manager in real estate, no one's looking for a property manager. They're looking for someone who is going to make it easy to rent out your house to great tenants. If you're selling pajamas, I'm not looking for pajamas. I'm looking for cool, comfortable, and feeling great when I'm about to go to bed. A bookkeeper for Heather would be something like, instead of I'm looking for someone to do my books, I'm looking for time, buying back the time that I need so I can do the things that I want. So as a bookkeeper, you're not actually selling bookkeeping services, you're selling time. Angela's a candle maker. So I would say not someone looking for candles, you're looking for the right candle with the right scent to create the right mood in your home. That kind of thing. So you just get inside the mind of the customer and what it is they're actually looking for, the result of what your product or the result of what your service is, rather than what the actual product itself is. So hopefully that makes sense. So jot that one down in the first panel and we'll move on to the next. Now your customer, they have a problem in mind. Their problem is that we tend to always be selling solutions to what we think are the external problems that people are having. But the true problem that people are having is in their heads. It's an internal problem. So how we put that in there is that every story kind of needs these elements. It's a villain with an external problem that causes them to have internal problems, which are then philosophical problems. Putting that in plain English, it's all about saying that the villain initiates some kind of external problem in your life that causes your customer to experience a frustration inside themselves that, quite frankly, is they shouldn't have to put up with that. It's philosophically wrong that they should have to put up with that. Now, this is a bit hard to understand until you put it into the shape of the problem. So the villain in this story particularly is fresh fruit is expensive in remote areas. The external problem is the cost of freight makes fresh produce expensive to get to remote locations. So the overall villain that's stopping people from eating fresh fruit is that it's very expensive to get in remote areas. That's because of this other problem they don't have any control about, which is the cost of freight, which makes it expensive to get that fruit there. Then the internal problem is this is making a customer feel very powerless and very helpless and at risk of having poor health. So they feel really anxious about this. They want to be able to eat better, but it's too expensive to do it. And this is ultimately just wrong. They shouldn't have to put up with this because all Australians deserve access to affordable, fresh food, right? So get that idea and let's swing that across to a makeup company. So the makeup company it's difficult to find darker shades of foundation for darker skin. That's the villain. But that external problem is because makeup companies tend to cater more towards lighter skin tones or white people. The internal problem that someone will feel about that is it makes the customer who is not in a lighter skin tone feel like they're not normal because the makeup company isn't actually catering for them. And this is philosophically wrong. It's just unfair because women come in all kinds of skin types and tones. So you're starting to get the idea. The villain is the thing that the result that's bad. There's a problem outside that causes that. There's a problem inside the head of the customer, what they actually feel about it. And then there's a philosophical problem with that. It's like, I shouldn't have to have this problem because everyone deserves to have makeup that actually suits their skin type. Bring it home to a mum who might have a kid with special needs. The villain is it's hard to find schooling for kids with special needs. The external problem is that society itself tends to be geared towards those who don't have special needs. This makes a parent feel really, really anxious, alone, isolated, unable to care properly for their kid. It makes them feel like crap. And this is philosophically wrong because education should be available for all kids, regardless of their needs. So, how we turn this into what your villain is there a root cause of your customers' problems? Now, this is one you might want to put on screen. So we had Madeline put in there that her business is about seniors and retirees who are downsizing and moving on. So that was one of the business types that we've got in the room today. So I'd say that the villain in this case is that there's not much material around of how a senior or a retiree can appropriately downsize their life to fit their new circumstances. The external is that the capitalist consumerist society encourages to upgrade, not to downsize. They always want to get more, get bigger, get bigger, get more expensive, rather than, hey, let's bring it back down to a sensible size. Internally, it makes your particular client feel like they're a failure because they once had big house, now they're going to get a small house. They once had big expenditure in their life, now they're going down to small expenditure. They once had 3 cars, now they got 1, and they feel like that's a bit of a failure. Now, it's absolutely not, because I've upsized and downsized according to income many, many times in my life, and never once did I feel like a failure. But that's what someone could feel like who's been used to all their life building, adding. Philosophically, it's just wrong for someone to have to feel like this because they don't have the education that it's actually a good thing to downsize at a certain time of your life. And we've got Carolyn, who is on here to say, I retail gear that enables dogs to join their owners on hiking, camping, biking, traveling adventures. This is great. This is fantastic. So the villain is that the villain is that that many times when people go on holidays, they can't take their favorite pet with them. That's the villain. The external problem is because there's not really a lot of the facilities or the right equipment to be able to take a dog, for instance, on a more active adventure holiday. Internally, it makes the customer feel really, they feel very anxious about their pet being in a kennel. They want to be able to take their pet with them because their pet basically is part of their family. And philosophically, it's just wrong because people should be able to take their best friend with them wherever they go if that's what they want to do. So you've got an idea in there of what some of those villains are. So what I want you to do in there is look at the villain. What is the end result of the problem that your customers have to face? Then the internal feeling that they have about that. What is causing that internal feeling is an external problem. And then the philosophical thing of it's basically you saying it's unfair that they should have to feel this way because anyone who wants to take their dog on a camping trip should be able to take their dog on a camping trip. So have a look at that, see how that sits for you, because that's going to be an interesting one. This is another area that people have a lot of problem with because they go, oh, I'm just thought this would be a really cool thing to start a business over, rather than thinking through what the true problem is behind the person. So we go and solving a problem quite often in businesses that no one actually had. My first business was a failure just because of that reason. I was trying to solve a problem that nobody actually had, or at least very few people had that problem. So it wasn't really solving a problem at all. Now, I know this is moving quickly, so don't worry, you can actually work through this at your own pace on the My Story Brand website and then still send those details through to me. So the next part is the principle 3, customers aren't looking for another hero. They're actually looking for a guide to help them through the process, not to make it better for them, but to help them through the process of almost solving it for themselves. So an example of where a guide could have been used but wasn't was a music streaming service called Tidal. Now, Tidal was started up by a guy called Jay-Z, better known these days for being the husband of Beyonce. He had this idea of building a music service, unlike Spotify and Apple Music and all those, that would respect the music again, that would pay the artists what they're due, and that the artist has control of the process, can release things that they want to release when they want to release them. And it was going to be something which is going to be, far more artist oriented rather than just a streaming service that seemed to be exploiting artists at the time. Now, what the problem was, it was very hard for anybody to feel any sort of empathy for the poor struggling artists when they were, multi millionaires sitting in multi-million-dollar mansions in New York City and living an amazing celebrity lifestyle. It just didn't appear that these particular artists were struggling enough to be really us wanting to go to a more expensive streaming service that was going to pay them more. Because, look, Beyonce and Jay-Z, they don't really need much more money. What they could have concentrated on was, instead of all this stuff on the left, which is all about the artist, they concentrate on what's on the right-hand side, which is all about the consumer, which is better quality audio. That's one of the great features of Tidal, is the audio quality is just sensational. Really beautiful quality audio and exclusive releases. Now, they did sort of toy with that idea. The problem was that they didn't have enough subscribers because of all this stuff on the left. So people didn't then go on to get those exclusive releases. So they had to abandon that. But exclusive releases and better quality audio were great points for people wanting to join that service. So we look then at what a guide does. A guide would be able to tell Jay-Z basically where those problems are and help him to correct them, to zero in on the things that are very customer oriented and sort of veer away from the egocentric stuff that was all about him and his money. So the first thing that a guide has is a level of empathy. Now, I'm probably pretty confident everyone in this room has a certain level of empathy. And that empathy is played out in answering the question of, how are you helping your customer to win the day? How are you helping them to have a better life, an easier life, helping them to have more time in their day, et cetera, et cetera. So we do this in the way we express our words, especially on websites and social media, where let's just say you're a local cafe and your statements you like to put out there are things like supporting a local business. We love what we do. We roast our own coffee. They're all about you and the things you do. But there's certain elements that really appeal to a person going to that cafe, which could be that it's close to home. It's really easy to park. That's a great thing for a cafe. The meals you know and love, for those who have sensitive stomachs, celiac, lactose intolerant, you know what I'm talking about. Knowing that you can go there and safely eat the food is a really important aspect. It's one of those things, a town called Catherine, which is 3 hours south of where I am in Darwin. It has, about probably 7 different cafes that do amazing coffees, amazing lunches, amazing menus. But the only one that really draws in tourists, particularly grey nomads in their caravans and their four-wheel drives, is the coffee club. Now, love or hate the coffee club, one thing you can say for sure is you know what you're going to get. You know what the coffee is. You know what the menu is. And the menu and the coffee is the same all around the country. A bit like McDonald's, which is the other place in Catherine that tends to get all the grey nomads going through, because they're getting something they know and love. And another one could be where I can actually hear the conversation. Cafes are notoriously noisy with the noises of the grinders and the noises of the espresso machine, that noise, and the kids screaming and all that sort of stuff. If you've got a cafe that actually answers that question, it's actually quiet enough that you can actually hear the conversation of the person you're trying to talk to, that is a really valuable thing to somebody who is looking for a cafe to go and meet their friend at. Let's think of a mechanic. They may like to advertise themselves on their website and in their ads saying, oh, you're one-stop repair shop, family owned over 3 generations, and we have a 21-point checklist. 21-point checklist means nothing to me, because I could have a 22-point checklist and trump him easily. But what does appeal to somebody who wants to use a mechanic is that this is someone who does a same-day service. You know you're going to get your car back at the end of the day. We'll pick you up and drop you off. Wow. We'll pick you up from work, but we'll also drop you off at work, so you don't have to worry about how to get from the workshop to work. There's loan car available. That has to be the most amazing thing that Ford ever did, was when they said, if you service your new Ford, we will give you a loan car for the day, so you don't have to have any inconvenience. It was crazy awesome that they were able to do that. Or even something really little, such grab a coffee while you wait. It's not saying we're awesome because we do that. We're saying this is the things that you have an advantage of when you deal with us, rather than your one-stop repair shop that's family owned for over 3 generations. Now, unless you know who those other generations were and you're new to town, you're not going to care about being family owned for over 3 generations, but you will care that there's a loan car available, or that they'll drop you off and pick you up from work. That is the sort of stuff that a customer really cares about. The second thing, once you've got empathy and you understand what it is that the customer wants, then you have the authority. Why should the customer trust you to deliver what you say you're going to deliver? And this is where things come in, that you can say the things that are about you. So this is the second one. First of all, establish that you're doing it for them. Secondly, then we come in and go, okay, here's the reasons why you should trust us. We're the Gold Plate Award winner for 2020 for delivering food or delivering great coffee. We've won these awards. It could be that they've got COVID safe accreditation, meaning that they clean and sanitize everything as they're going along, so you can feel safe in that particular cafe. They could be a member of the local Australian Hotels Association or the Australian Hospitality Association organization. So that means that they've got a certain code of conduct they have to follow that makes you kind of maybe trust them a bit more. And you can see that they've got 5 stars on TripAdvisor, which is a great way of telling that these people do a good thing with many people over and over and over again. They're not a flash in the pan. They've actually got the runs on the board to be able to show they do these things properly. A mechanic then could have statements like, I only use Valvoline oils. They mention a brand that has a level of trust with it. We have Royal Automotive Club or RACQ or AANT approved services here, which makes you feel safe because you know they've been vetted and verified by these car clubs. Or there might be a Chamber of Commerce member. Again, it's a group of businesses that have agreed to a certain code of conduct, which means that they are promising to do the right thing by you as a consumer. So now what we're going to do is put a statement in place that expresses that you have an understanding of what your customer's deal is. So in the case of going back through our people who are in the room today, the ones that are participating openly, we've got Kate, who's got the pajamas, makes PJs. So say, what is the thing that your PJ solves for a customer? So it could be that it could be a status thing. It could be, when my kids go and have sleepovers at their friends' places, I want them to have pajamas that say that, oh, your mum's really fancy. It could be that. Like, honestly, a lot of purchases of higher end or different products is because of status. It's not because of any reason that's quite practical. It's just because they want to look good. Or it could be that in our bookkeeper's case, that the empathy statement is, I know you're busy. My service helps you to get back time. So that's the main thing that a bookkeeper does. That's why I've got a bookkeeper, because I do not want to spend my entire days going through reconciling all my receipts and all that. I pay someone to do that. In the case of seniors and retirees downsizing and moving on, the empathy could be, rather than I'll coach you through the process and connect you with all the right financial methods to do this. Great. That's just your features. Your benefits then would be something like, and that's how you express your empathy. Your benefits would be, sit down and let me work it all out so that you can just get on with living your best life. So that could be your empathy statement. For Carolyn, retailing gear for the dog. So the empathy statement is that isn't that I've got great gear for your dog. It is the gear you need to be able to take your best friend with you on the journey of life. So you're saying that they want to solve is taking their best friend with them on the journey. That's expressing empathy for their situation rather than saying, I've got great gear. Now, the authority side of it is how can you demonstrate? So what are the memberships, the certifications, the experiences? Now, this is when also reviews, recommendations, and testimonials come in. So this is where you go, what are the things that you can put on your website or somewhere in your stuff that actually expresses to someone why they should be able to trust you? So jot that one down as well. What is the empathy statement you can make? So what is the thing you can say to people that makes it clear that you understand what their problem is that they need solving? And then what can you say that helps someone to be able to trust you? Now, if you don't have education in these areas and certifications, that's fine. You don't need any of that. What you can do, though, is state that I've helped hundreds, I've helped dozens of families, I've assisted businesses from across Western Australia to be able to do this thing. So whatever it is that you can say and safely say it. So Carolyn's saying we have reviews, pages, and badges plus over 15,000 happy customers. Yes, that's your authority. That's definitely yours, Carolyn. So yeah, well done with that one. Gosh, I wish I had 15,000 happy customers. Actually, I'd be a lot more grey than what I am, although I did dye my beard recently, so that's probably why I'm not so grey. So principle number 4 is that customers trust a guide who has a plan. And a plan, in this case in Star Wars, was a plan to go and rescue, to blow up the Death Star because the Death Star blows up planets and it's killing, millions of people. So a plan basically gets your customer from where they are to where they want to be. So the plan to get them there, that's what we're going to do. So a plan usually comes in terms of, what it is that you do. What are the steps that someone takes to be able to engage you, or the steps that they'll go through to get from where they are to where they want to be. So in the terms of someone who's doing a sort of a coaching kind of service, what are the basic steps that you take a client through? Do you do it weekly? Do you do it monthly? How do you measure the success? What accountability is there? Now I'm just going to bring up my website and show you how I've actually done this myself on one of my websites. So I've actually, in one of my business, the one I just bought back recently, I just recently started redoing the site, and I've got what I mean with the steps all sort of lined up out there. Put you over here, buddy boy. Don't need you. I need to share this screen. I'll get it right. Here we go, desktop 3. Okay, so I've got my statement here, which I don't really know what I need, but I know that I need to be doing better online. This is the plan. So this is my plan to engage with me through this thing. Step 1, your initial call with us. Step 2, once you've accepted the quote, we invoice. Step 3, we get to work on your project. Step 4, we deliver your project ready for review and approval so that you can say, this is how you work with me. So those of you who've got services, so I'm talking to Heather, I'm talking to Madeline, you've got very clear services rather than products, then what you'll be doing is step 1, do your discovery call with me, discover how I can help you out. Step 2, I put forward a plan to you that show you how we're going to make your life easier. Step 3, I get to work on doing it. Step 4, we'll report back to you every month with a report of how we're doing with this particular plan. So that's very, very clear. It feels very risk-free when you outline your plan for something like that. The same thing I've done with another website, which is going live in the next couple of days for a tour in Darwin. So they've got their tours. We've got a bit about them, and then we've got the how to walk Darwin, the local. Number 1, choose your tour. Number 2, choose your time. Number 3, make your booking. Number 4, meet up with us. Having a clear path of action for a customer means there's no confusion about what they're doing. And this is a really, it's almost like a monkey see, monkey do. People don't necessarily know to do something unless you tell them to do something. In this case, you're outlining those exact steps you need to take so that you're able to engage with you and not have too many surprises come up, because that's what people don't want, is surprises. So we're looking at coaches, look at catering companies. I've got a case of this because I'd never used a catering company before. But in the case of catering, it was one of those things where I went, well, how do you do catering? How do people work with caterers? How do we get engaged as a caterer? How do I choose the food? How do I arrange delivery of the food? Do I pick it up? Do they drop it off? I did not know how catering worked. No idea. So you could have something which lays out those steps of, okay, step one, go to our website and pick your budget. Number two, select the day that you would like to have the food delivered to you. Number three, make your payment. Number four, we would deliver your food, and at the end of your event, we'll come and pick up the plates and the platters and the cutlery. So you've got a simple 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is the magic number in this case. It can be 3 or more. 3, 4, or 5 steps are enough for someone to be able to take in and feel safe with. If you've got 19 steps with which people engage with you, it's too much. Simplify it down. No more than 5 steps, preferably 3 or 4. 4 seems to be a very sweet spot that people are more comfortable with. So being able to, what your plan for being engaged is, outlining that on their website. So an accountant, for instance, or a bookkeeper even, what do they do, what they don't do? Do I even need a bookkeeper? Do I need an accountant? What do they need me to do? What's the difference between an accountant and a bookkeeper? I didn't know when I first engaged one. I went and got an accountant. Turns out what I really needed was a bookkeeper, because they could do most of my tax stuff for me as well, because they were registered tax agents. How do I know if they're doing anything at all? So I can go, well, how do I know that my bookkeeper, Michael, is actually doing what he says he is? Well, he says, oh, you can see what I'm doing. Just pop in a 0. Here's the login. Have a look and I'll show you what I've done. Wow, you do a lot of work for the money. I definitely want to keep you on. I love my bookkeeper. He's freaking amazing, because he's just able to turn a very, very complex thing that I hate doing into something which I actually now play a little game with him. I pay him to reconcile my accounts and my receipts, right? I now go in every day, I spend out 5 minutes and I race him to it to see if I can beat him to it, and I'll do the reconciliation. Keeps telling me not to do that because it's his job. And I'm like, no, it's keeping me interested. Don't worry, I still love you. You're still doing all the stuff I don't want to do, such as my BAS, all that sort of stuff. So it's a bit of a fun journey I go through with him. Having a plan that has a name is even more memorable. So it could be something like, if you're a coach, have a more meaningful life in 4 steps. If you're a mechanic, have a safer car in just 4 hours, or have a perfectly catered event in just 3 steps, or your accounts under control in 30 days. Something like that allows someone to put a picture in their head of how they're going to move from that transformation from being confused and hesitant through to being successful and avoiding failure. They can picture that in their heads. So now you've got the idea of what plans are. What's your process? What are the 3 or 4 steps that your customers can take that lead them from being that hesitant and confused and not really knowing how to fix the problem through having their problem fixed and avoiding some kind of big, massive failure? What are those 3 to 4 steps? Now, a lot of cases, if you're not selling retail gear, you may be doing something like, for instance, step 1, book a discovery call at the time that suits you. Step 2, we'll discuss all your requirements. Step 3, I'll put forward a proposal to you, which contains all the pricing and all the information you need to know. Step 5, accept the proposal and we get started. Now, if it's a case of something you're selling retail, let's just say the retail gear that enables dogs to join their owners on hiking, camping, biking, traveling adventures. So we go step 1 through the 4 is step 1, choose what adventure you want to go on. Step 2, see the list of gear that we've got that's appropriate for that kind of adventure. Step 3, check our recommendations for what kind of gear is that people who have bought from people who bought from us before have recommended themselves. Step 5, add to the cart the things that you want to buy. So even if you've got a Shopify site or a WooCommerce site or something like that, it can still benefit from having these plans. Going, step 1, do this, because we go to anyone's site and it's like a big site full of products to buy. There's a reason why we have things like latest editions, or, hey, going camping, here's your selection. Going hiking, here's your selection. Having recommendations works really well on e-commerce because people like to be told what to do. Contrary to popular opinion, we actually like to be told what to do when it comes to buying. There's a story about a jam company that ran jam taste tests in supermarkets in the US. When they ran a selection of 23 different flavors of jams, they got people taste testing about 3 different ones before one out of about 6 people would actually buy a jar of that jam. It was just a little bit of a paralysis of analysis when there's too many things to choose from. So they was go, oh yeah, I'm just going to avoid this altogether because it's too much choosing. When they reduced the jam down to 6 that they could taste from, well, they found that people were still taste testing about 3, but what was happening was that more like 6 out of 10 were buying that jam. So they had a much better rotation. They had less people because it wasn't as big a stand and wasn't attracting as many people, but the amount of jam that those people were buying was far higher than when they had more jams ready to taste. So the idea of making it very, very simple on an e-commerce site for people to bundle things together. I'm going camping. I'm going to the snow. I'm going to the tropics. That kind of thing helps people to go, oh, that's me. That's the things I need to recommend. They're much more easily then able to buy something that suits where they're going and what they're doing because you've had the empathy to step into their shoes and go, well, I'm going to the tropics with my dog. Are there things I really need to do and think about? And that's when you come up with it. So once you've got those in there, there's an agreement you make with your customers that alleviates their fears of doing business with you. That could be, do you have a review process? Do you have a returns policy? Just whack that stuff in the next segment where you can say, okay, what is the thing we do? Do we have a returns policy? Do we have a refund policy? Do we have a support arrangement? Do we have a review process? That kind of thing. For instance, if I'm booking a website to be made for someone, I bundle in 12 months worth of monthly updates with them to contact them and say, hey, do you need anything done? Rather than just going, oh yeah, I'll just collect the money for that. And then hopefully they will never need any changes. I proactively reach out and say, hey, Narita, do you need an update to the website this month? And she goes, oh, actually, yeah, I was thinking about doing X. Might seem counterintuitive to actually go out and look for more work that you've already not going to get paid extra for. But what it does is it creates a great feeling of safety and security for that client, so that when you then ask them to renew their web hosting for $250 a year this time next year, they've had 12 points of contact through the year. They're more than happy to pay for that renewal. The next bit is that we're going to get called into action. So the principle number 5 is customers do not take action unless you challenge them to take action. In the movie The Rain Man, Tom Cruise would not have gone and picked up his brother Dustin Hoffman if he didn't get the call that his father, who was looking after his autistic brother, had passed away. He was living his happy, carefree life and fancy-free life in LA, and he didn't particularly want to have anything to do with his autistic brother. But when the call came, there was a call to action that said, if you don't pick him up, there's no one else to take care of him. You have to pick him up. So you haven't really given him much of a choice. Elle Woods in Legally Blonde is a great example of this. She wouldn't have applied to go to Harvard and become the hero attorney in court if her boyfriend had not have dumped her in the first place, because he thought he needed a more serious girlfriend, not a fluffy blonde with lots of pink clothing. He thought he needed a serious girlfriend, that Elle wasn't serious. She then went out of spite. Her motivations weren't great. It was like, I'm going to win back my boyfriend by becoming smart. She basically then got to the point where she was smart and went, I don't need no boyfriend. He's fine. He can go to hell. So she wouldn't have done that massive change in her life unless something obviously quite traumatic for her boyfriend dumping her, hadn't have happened. Calls to action are things like call now, book now, limited time only, buy now until sold out at this price. So you've got these very strong statements which make it very clear what the next step is. Now, it can feel a little bit if you're in a service industry. So if you're doing stuff, not so much retail. Retail lends itself really easily to the buy now, to the shop now, and the add to cart and all those actions. But as a service, you may feel a little bit awkward about that and going, I don't want to feel too salesy. I feel like I'm sort of reaching out and being a bit presumptuous by telling people to buy and book and all that. The problem is that if you don't do that, they're not going to buy from you. It's going to come across like you don't really believe in what you're doing. So ultimately, if you're not willing to ask people to pay you for what you do, you probably don't believe in what you're doing. The minute they can smell that on you, they know that they can take advantage of you or just avoid you altogether, suck all the knowledge out of you, and then run off and just go and actually engage with someone else who is a little less shy about asking for money. So direct calls to action are things like buy now, book now, order now, or even something like let's go. They're an action on your website or somewhere in your social media or somewhere in your marketing that says, this is the next step you have to take. People are monkey see, monkey do. So if you don't tell them where to go, they won't go there. It's like, for instance, we've got like an abundance of signs and safety messages all around us in this world today. That's because people don't have common sense. It's not very common. They have to be told all the time, turn left here. Don't walk across this intersection unless the lights are green. Jaywalking is a crime. We've got, like, even in the lift, it's saying in my apartment complex that please take your double bag your rubbish and take it down the bin room. Don't leave it outside your door because it attracts vermin. People actually do that in this building. This is not a cheap building, and people are actually doing that because monkey see, monkey do. Unless you're told, you won't do. So that's the next step. But if people are not quite ready to do something with you, particularly if your stuff is expensive, it's a high-end purchase, it takes a bit of thinking. Think of it like dating. So the transitional call to action comes into place, which is rather than go buy now, it's like saying, hey, will you marry me? And the customer's like, oh, no, I don't know you. So we go out again. They'll go on another date. So the customer says, okay, will you go out with me again? Yeah, I'll go out with you again, but I'm not going to marry you. Then it will, okay, will you marry me now once we get to the second date? No, I'm not going to marry you yet. Okay, will you go out with me again? Yeah, sure. You're interesting and the information you provided me is helpful. I'm going to go out with you again. Finally, you get to about the 52nd date down the road and you say, will you marry me? And the customer goes, yep, I will marry you now because I've had enough dealing with you to trust you. I've read enough about you. I've seen your recommendations. I've seen your reviews. I understand your product. I understand your process. Now I'm ready to do that. So the transitional call to action in your case could be something like, okay, not ready to buy now. Here, download this information sheet. It will tell you all the ways that you can, and then the places around Australia where you can take your dogs on vacation with you. Here's a quick ebook that you can download that tells you the top 10 things to consider before you make a very sudden decision to downsize and move on from your current home when you're going into retirement. Here's the top 5 things you should look for in a bookkeeper. Here are the reasons why it's important to wear pajamas to bed and not sleep in the nudie. So anything like that, that's a way for people to learn more about you. That's what we call a transitional call to action. They're not necessarily buying yet. They're not quite ready to get there yet. They're not at that stage of the sales funnel where they're ready to buy that thing from you, but they're ready to perhaps learn a little bit more about you or to find out a bit more about what it is you do and how you can serve them. So now in step number 5, what is your direct call to action? In the case of those of you who have websites that sell stuff, buy now, shop now, add to cart, that's all your calls to action. Really super, super simple. For a bookkeeper, it will be book a discovery call. For someone who's selling, so for Madeline, yours would be book a discovery call, something like that. But your transitional call to action could be download this information pack or give us your email address and we'll send you back information on how to get started, that kind of thing. For Heather, as a bookkeeper, yours would be something like, okay, I'm going to do this. Yours is easily a discovery call because it's all about having a chat to someone obligation free to see what their needs and requirements are. To see, number 1, if they are even needing a bookkeeper. Number 2, if you actually want to work with them. Remember, you don't have to work with everybody who comes to you. That's the beauty about this day and age. You do not have to serve every single customer. In the case of Angela with the candles, yours could be, if it's on a website, then it's like add to cart, shop now, that kind of thing. Or your transitional call to action could be read more about how having the right scented candle in your home adds warmth and fragrance and a great feeling of homeliness, that kind of thing. Have an information sheet, a white paper, a ebook, anything that's going to support why people should buy your particular candles ahead of everyone else's. There's a great TikTok account that I used to follow, which is actually a girl in the US, I think, who reviews candles. She buys candles from all over the world and reviews them. And she was like saying that sometimes that the more expensive the candle is, it's not necessarily a great candle. It just means it's got a great brand behind it that people want to spend a lot of money on. kind of like the diffuser stick thing that I buy from one of the local smelly shops here in Darwin. I call them smelly shops because you go past and it's like this wall of smells coming out at you of all sorts of things. Buy something from I think it's called Peppermint Grove as a brand, and it's really bloody expensive, like really super expensive, but it lasts 6 months. So it's definitely worth the spend. So what is your direct call to action? What is your transitional call to action? What you ultimately want to do is help that person to avoid failure and find success. Everyone is avoiding a tragic ending. They have no idea how much you can change their lives for the better. So you've got to be able to tell them what it is the end result can be for them, what they're going to avoid and what they're actually going to get. And this is a process of marketing which is motivated by people's fear of loss or fear of missing out, or FOMO. It could be the $100 test. So the $100 test is I pick up $100 in the street and I find it, I feel happy for 5 minutes and go, woohoo, I found $100. I go spend it, that's forgotten about. I lose $100 in the street. I'll obsess about that for a week, a month. You idiot. Every time I go somewhere and I go, oh, I was about to pull out, oh God, that's right, I lost that $100. You think of all the things you're going to miss out on because you don't have that $100, right? There's a formula in ad writing which goes through the threat model. So it starts off with, you are vulnerable to a threat. You should take action to avoid that threat. Here's how you avoid that threat. Finally, take the action to avoid the threat. So again, we let someone know that they're actually vulnerable to something being bad in their lives. They should take action to avoid that bad thing. Here's how you do it. Here's how you avoid the bad thing. And now go on, do the thing. Go and take that action and avoid that threat and be a much more peace of mind person. The termite spraying industry is really good at this. Termites can damage your home, costing you tens of thousands of dollars. You are vulnerable to a threat. The second one, you can do something about it and save your home. You can do something about mitigating that threat. Start with a termite check to make sure you're okay and so know that you're safe. Here's what you do to mitigate that threat of termites. And finally, call today to book your inspection. Do it now. Avoid that threat. This is the basis of all insurance ads, of all pest spraying ads, all that kind of stuff. So what are the things that someone's trying to avoid when they're buying your stuff? Here's some ideas to throw out there. From the candle shop, I would say that avoiding a home smelling like crap, like as if you've got teenagers, you don't want your home smelling like teenager. I just had a 20-year-old move out of this apartment of mine. Holy crap, that room is still like, I'm still trying to get the smell of a 20-year-old male out of that room. It was absolutely woeful. Anyone who's a mum of a teenager, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's just special smells that are just teenage smells. So it could be, the threat of not being able to invite people home because your home stinks. That could be one thing that's very high motivator for you. It could be for the bookkeeper. It's avoiding not being able to do your BAS properly and getting a fine from the ATO. For the PJs, it's not getting a great night's sleep because you're not comfortable in the pajamas you buy, those cheap pajamas you bought from Kmart. For the retail gear for dogs going on adventure holidays, it could be avoiding the failure of having to leave your best friend on their own, well, not on their own, in a kennel for 2 weeks without you. That's quite traumatic for a dog to go through. Probably a little bit more traumatic for the owners of the dogs to go through, to be honest. Dogs tend to have a great time at the kennels. They're off playing with all their new friends, and then they come to pick them up. It's like kids, like, I don't want to go home. I'm playing with my friends. In the case of seniors retiring downsize, the threat could be that you're left with a home that you can't manage and bills you can't afford to pay because it's just too big, especially like with property taxes and land tax going up as the value of housing goes up. You could be sitting on a house that's just beautiful. You lived there for the last 30 years of your life. You can't afford to pay the taxes on it. So that's kind of the ideas of what the threats are. What are the threats? Just list down what the threats are that you're trying to offset with your product or service. And finally, what are the positive things that happen in people's lives once they have your product or your service? A nicer smelling room, a plan for the future where you're able to downsize and feel good about it, knowing that your BAS is taken care of and your tax is getting paid. knowing that your dog can come with you and have a happy time on a vacation, that's just as important and cathartic for them as what it is for you. It could be in the candles, where we've done the candles. The PJs is your kids don't have to look like an embarrassment in their cheap Kmart PJs when they go to the next sleepover. I honestly don't wear PJs, so I don't know what the benefits of pajamas are, but I'm sure they're awesome pajamas. I would probably need to go and look at your pajamas, Kate, to see like what I'm missing out on here. So we've now got what people are trying to avoid failure with. We've got the success. Now we look at what the transformation is. Someone's going to transform from one thing into another thing. So what is that transformation? What can you say? My transformation of my clients is to take them from hesitant business owners to capable, confident marketers. Yours could be that you're taking you're going to take confused retirees, unsure of the future, to confident downsizers ready to make positive changes in their lives. You could be from, nervous dog owners who don't feel safe taking their dogs to a kennel, to happy dog owners who can take their best friend on holidays with them. Bookkeepers could be taking nervous business owners who don't quite know what they're doing with their finances, to having the tools, the expertise, and the support to get on with their business in the way they want to see fit. Pajamas could be taking boring sleepwear to a fun new level, so that you can feel playful, cool, and comfortable while you're asleep. Those sort of things are taking a transformation from one thing, which is a negative, into a positive thing at the end. So write that one down. Now that is the end of the StoryBrand process. Now what I want to do, that email address is on there. I want you to be able to share your StoryBrand stuff with me. So if you go into StoryBrand, there's actually a sharing thing. So I'm going to go into my StoryBrand, because I've got like several of them in there, and I'll share my screen and show you what I'm talking about. So how you will then share that through with me. Let me share the other screen so I can quickly wrap this up and you can get on with your day. All right, so I'm going to log into my account, which is, come on, you can do it. This super high speed internet sometimes doesn't quite come out to high speed internet. So make sure I'm sharing the right screen. I'm not even sure if I am. Let's share this one. Okay, so let's say this is my one and I want to share it. What you do is just go up here, the share button, and then you can share it out. So copy that link or send it to me directly. And my email address is this one. Send it like that. And it sends me a copy of your one. So I get that. I can then package that up in a brand script for you that helps you to be able to then use that however you want to see fit in your social media, your website, whatever you want to do, to be able to use that to more clearly articulate and explain what your business does and what the benefit is of dealing with you as opposed to dealing with your competitors. By having a very clear brand script, you're about 15 steps ahead of your competitors, because most of them don't have this. So if you can implement this, it really does help you to be able to lift yourself that little bit further. So thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really hope you got something out of this. It was a lot of fun too. We went to the movies. We looked at Julia Roberts. We looked at Luke Skywalker. It didn't seem like it was going to make much sense until we kind of finally got there. Please do fill out your StoryBrand stuff. Send that through to me so I can help put that together. Give me about a week to put that together for you. And I really look forward to seeing what some of your ideas are and getting to know some of your businesses just that little bit better. Thank you so much again. Remember asbas.com.au, asbas.com.au, if you want to book in a one-to-one with myself or any of the amazing, fabulous advisors who will help you through these processes of branding and marketing and systems and business growth. We're all here to help you out, with your first one being free, and any of that come over. So yeah, get onto this when you can, send it through, and I'll hear from you very shortly. Thank you, and have a great afternoon.